The League of Ireland was formed in 1921, in the autumn of 1921, after a split with the IFA, which was the Belfast-based organisation that had administered football throughout the island of Ireland prior to the War of Independence. The League of Ireland started, as I say, in autumn of 1921. Athlone didn't join it the first year. There was no club outside Dublin involved in the first season, but Athlone became the first non-Dublin club to join the league in 1922-23. Athlone had actually first entered the Cup in 1921-22 as a non-league team, as the 23-24 campaign was their third FAI Cup campaign. It started that season against Midland Athletic, a then League of Ireland team, with a 2-0 victory at home in the sports grounds in Athlone. The scores of that game, unfortunately, have been lost in the mists of time. I wasn't able to uncover the scores in that particular game. That qualified Athlone to the quarterfinals against Shelbourne. Now, Shelbourne were one of the two elite teams of League of Ireland football then, Bohemians and Shelbourne. Shelbourne had been pipped for the League of Ireland title by Bohemians that season, and in fact, throughout the entire campaign across all the various competitions, Shelbourne were unbeaten on home ground. They had played 21 games, won 18 and drew 3, prior to meeting Athlone in that Cup quarter-final on home ground for Shelbourne in Shelbourne Park in Ringsend. All of the pre-match publicity was very much predicting an easy Shelbourne win, but it was Athlone who prevailed on a 2-0 scoreline, with Jim Kennedy scoring the opening goal and Frank Gent with the goal that secured the victory in the second half. Athlone's victory over Shelbourne in the quarter-final meant that they met the other elite team, Bohemians, in the semi-final. Again, that game was in Shelbourne Park, neutral venue for the semi-final. Bohemians had won the league that season. They were the team to beat throughout that year. So again, another stiff task faced Athlone. The original match, this game went to replay. The original match finished 0-0. Again, large attendance, but Athlone played a kind of a helter-skelter style of football. Maybe not that dissimilar to what we'd associate with Jack Charlton in Ireland of the 80s and 90s. A direct style of football. They didn't allow the opposition to settle on the ball whatsoever. They were in their faces all the time. But some of the reports of that game suggested Athlone deployed that style of play to the nth degree, and it was a little bit chaotic. The game finished 0-0, and as is often the case when a lesser team doesn't take the opportunity to beat the stronger team on the first occasion, people assumed that Bohemians would prevail in the replay, but it wasn't to be. Again, a superb performance by Athlone, completely overwhelmed their much fancied Dublin opposition with a 2-0 victory in the replay, again in Shelbourne Park. The goals on that occasion, again by Frank Gent and also by Norman Lister. Two very interesting characters. Frank Gent was a key figure throughout Athlone's campaign, a fleet-footed, direct winger whose pace seemed to be a significant trouble to opposition defences. Norman Lister, more notable for his off-field activities, part of the Lister business family in Athlone, in and out of the team over a couple of years, not a regular, but came in on that occasion due to injuries and a couple of other factors which meant Athlone were short of a number of players on the occasion, and scored a goal that helped Athlone to reach the cup final. Defeating the League of Ireland champions as part of the cup run was a significant achievement for Athlone, and the excitement was gathering throughout that campaign, and that victory over Bohemians really brought it to fever pitch. The Westmeath Independent at the time published a poem written by a fan that captured the sense of excitement on occasion, and I reproduced the poem in my book, When We Were Kings, the story of Athlone Town's 1924 FAI Cup triumph. And I'm going to read the opening and closing stanza in the poem. The poem is called The Battle of Shelburne Park. What though the ground is coursed white and chill the morning air, Athlone shall feel the team to win, and little do they care. We'll win the cup, we'll win the cup, we'll make it all our own. We'll never let down the dear old town, the honour of Athlone. And onward then, ye gallant men, the race is now quite o'er. 'Tis but a coward that doubts you'll do as you have done before. What though they call ye bogmen or villagers unknown, you'll win the Irish Senior Cup, and then 'tis up Athlone. Fortsons were a factory team associated with the Ford's tractor plant originally in Cork. A very large concern, and they had the ability to be able to attract in footballers from England, ostensibly to work in the plant, but obviously also to play in the plant football team. So their starting 11 is full of names like that you'd associate with Scotland or north of England, like Malpass and Pinckney and Miller with an A, Millar. So you can see the how their operations as a large employer helped them to supplement their football team. That game, as I say, was on St. Patrick's Day. 22,000 packed into Tailteann Park. Some of the photographs are very entertaining and very evocative. People sitting on the sideline, people right around the goal, almost within touching distance of the goalpost. It really gave a sense of the hysteria, I suppose, the excitement. All of the newspaper reports again had warned Fortsons about to be ready for Athlone. Fortsons hadn't played Athlone before because they weren't in the League of Ireland. At that stage, they joined the following year. They had experience in the Cup. They had got to the Cup semi-final the previous year as a non-league team. They played in what was known as the Munster Senior League. But as I said, they didn't join the League of Ireland until 1924-25. So they didn't have any experience of playing Athlone. All of the newspaper reports forewarned Fortsons, shall we say, of Athlone's energetic, exuberant style. But it seemed that they weren't prepared. Athlone overwhelmed them from the start. Could easily have been 2 or 3 goals up in the opening half. The crucial goal, it was a 1-0 victory. The crucial goal came from Dennis Hannon in the 20th minute. And I suppose as the game went on, the Fortsons began to come into it a little, and the last 10 or 15 minutes had a couple of half chances which could have left Athlone ruining their failure to capitalise on their advantage. But fortunately for Athlone, their goalkeeper, Paddy O'Reilly, came to the rescue and ensured a historic 1-0 victory for Athlone. The only time Athlone Town's men's team has won the FAI Cup 100 years ago this year. What was most interesting about the Athlone Town Cup winning campaign was that 9 of the 11 players who played in the final were from Westmeath. It was very much a local outfit. The two exceptions were Paddy O'Reilly and John Joe Dykes. All of the others were either from Athlone or Mullingar. So I suppose that strengthened or copper fastened the connection between supporters and the team. And it's a notable aspect of the Cup campaign, as is the fact that Athlone went throughout the campaign without conceding a goal. The first team to do so, scoreless in every game in terms of conceding. Football at the time was governed by what was known as the Free State Football Association, the forerunner of the FAI as we know it. Having split from the IFA, the FAI was at that stage desperately seeking international recognition, and the Olympic Games in Paris in 1924 provided the ideal opportunity. Ireland were invited to take part in that. It was obviously run by the Olympic Federation, or the Olympic Council of Ireland as it was at the time. But most of the details were carried out by the FAI. The selection of the team, the arrangements to send the team to Paris, the fundraising. Effectively, the Olympic Council just entered the team. That was their only involvement, or their only role. So it provided an exciting postscript to that season. Athlone, obviously, having been cup winners, were very much in the forefront of selectors' minds. There were a number of trial games held, and 5 Athlonians were selected amongst the 16-man panel that travelled to Paris. There were 5 from Athlone, 5 from St James's Gate, 5 from Bohemians, and 1 from a team called Brooklyn. The Olympic Games at the time was strictly amateur, so any professional players, albeit there were very few, were excluded from selection. The 5 Athlonians who were selected were Paddy O'Reilly, the goalkeeper, a Dubliner; John Joe Dykes from Sligo, who was centre-back. He had been working in Athlone at the time. Dennis Hannon, who I mentioned previously, Frank Gent, and Tommy Muldoon. Now, those 3 were from Athlone, and just to outline a little bit about them. Frank, I've spoken about Frank Gent. He was from a well-known Athlone family, many of them involved in the teaching profession. Dennis Hannon was really Mr. Football. He was, albeit he wasn't captain of the Athlone Town team, he was captain of the Olympics team. He was a solicitor by trade, a man who was the first to win cups under both jurisdictions, the IFA in 1908 with Bohemians, and the Athlone Town in 1924. He was 36 at this stage. He was capped not as a professional player, but for the full Ireland international team prior to the split on 4 or 5 occasions, and obviously after the split in the Olympic Games. He also had some amateur caps. So he was really a well-established figure in the soccer scene of Ireland at the time, a highly respected figure, and pretty much seemed to be the brains of the Athlone Town outfit. Ireland received a bye in the opening round of the Olympics, and were then penciled in to play Bulgaria in the opening in their first game in Paris. That was Ireland's debut in the Olympics, Olympic football tournament, and a 1-0 victory ensued with the goal, Ireland's historic first goal from Paddy Duncan, a St James's Gate player. Reports of that game indicate that Ireland had much the better of proceedings throughout, and again failed to capitalise on their opportunities, but they did manage to secure. This was a knockout tournament, so they secured their route into the quarter-final against the Netherlands. The Netherlands had a significant win in their opening encounter, so it was a stiff task for Ireland. I should say in the opening game against Bulgaria, 4 Athlonians started, the exception of the 5 being Frank Gent. He did join the starting team for the second game, so all 5 Athlonians were amongst the 11 starting players in that Olympic quarter-final game against the Netherlands. That game went to extra time, Frank Gent having equalised for Ireland during the normal time, but unfortunately Holland, or the Netherlands, grabbed the winner in extra time to eliminate Ireland from the Olympic Games at the quarter-final stage. What was interesting about the 1924 Games was, and there's been a book written about this which describes it as the first World Cup, because it effectively was. It was the tournament that prompted FIFA to establish the World Cup. Jules Rimet was obviously a Frenchman. He was present in Paris and actually dined with the Irish team during their stay in Paris, and he was the driving force behind the original World Cup. Uruguay have stars on their jerseys, and they include the 1924 Olympic Games as one of their World Cups. They regard it as a World Cup victory for them. So that was I suppose, the calibre of the tournament. The first real showcase international football, and it brought home a lesson to many European nations of the fact that they didn't control or own the game, that there were different styles of play being exhibited across the world, and as I said previously, Uruguay were hugely impressive, went on to win the 1930 World Cup, and their style of play drew gasps of admiration almost. You can almost sense the surprise from the newspaper reports, the journalists writing back to newspapers in England, in France, the French newspapers, and also back in Ireland. There was a report from one of the FAI officials who travelled with the team, wrote a postscript, a sort of a review for one of the Irish newspapers afterwards, and he said that if we Irish think we know enough or a lot about football, we have a lot to learn having watched the Uruguayans. So that was really the message that came from the games. Having been eliminated by the Netherlands, the following day, surprisingly, Ireland played a friendly against Estonia, who had also been eliminated at that stage. It allowed Ireland to play some of the players who hadn't had any match time. Tommy Muldoon was the only Athlonian to play in that game against Estonia, which Ireland won 3-1. And that followed with a novel friendly, I suppose, against America in Dailymount Park. America had competed also, the USA had also competed in Paris, and on their way back to the States, stopped off in Ireland to play an Irish selection. That game, being back on Irish soil, included a number of professional players too, who were obviously prohibited in taking part in the Olympic Games. And again, Tommy Muldoon was the only Athlonian to feature in that lineup. The 1924 Olympic Games are an interesting story because they were the starting point of two Irish sporting traditions. These men were trailblazers, and their place in Irish sporting history was allowed to diminish. They were Ireland's first senior soccer internationals. Those men received caps at the time. Those games were regarded as full internationals at the time. But they've slipped off the FAI record books. They were also Ireland's first Olympians. This was the first time that Ireland competed as Team Ireland. Prior to that, Irish men competed in the Olympics, either under the Great British team or the American team or the Canadian team, or in some rare cases as individuals, but never was there a formal Irish team. Football was the first event in the 1924 Olympics. So these men were Ireland's first Olympians. Ireland's first Olympians, Ireland's first soccer team. That's a rare and unique claim to fame to have. Unfortunately, as I said, the FAI, albeit hugely involved in selecting and financing the Olympic Games adventure, it wasn't done under their auspices. It was done under the auspices of the Olympic Federation, Olympic Council. The first international that the FAI organised was 1926 against Italy. And that, over a period of time, began to supplant the 1924 Games as Ireland's first official soccer game. That was probably cemented by a ruling from FIFA in the mid-40s or 50s as part of a power struggle with the Olympics, that those games should no longer be regarded as full internationals. In the 1990s, FIFA changed their mind on that and said that all games prior to 1940, all Olympic games prior to 1940 should be regarded as full internationals. The decision as to whether to do that or not was left to the individual associations. All of the teams that Ireland played during those Olympics, Bulgaria, Netherlands, Estonia, America, all regard those games as senior internationals. The FAI hadn't until this year. I was involved in a committee of 3 or 4 people to lobby for this over a couple of months. We met with the FAI, we provided historical documentation, some reports, and finally the FAI board agreed to sanction both a ceremony to mark the 100th anniversary of those games, but also to officially rewrite the history books, to officially restore the men of the Olympic Games of 1924 in their proper position as Ireland's first senior international footballers.
The Tailteann Games were a cultural extravaganza that took place in Ireland on 3 occasions, 1924, 1928 and 32. They were established at a key time with the emergence of the new Irish Free State. So Ireland had just come out of the War of Independence and a very bloody and traumatic civil war. So the whole idea of the Tailteann Games was to present Ireland and the new Irish Free State on an international stage to show that it had its own cultural identity and that the state was able to stand on its own 2 feet. The Tailteann Games were a revival of the Gaeltacht Tailteann, which actually predated the Greek Olympics, and they took place in County Meath. That's where they get their name from, the area in which they took place in County Meath. They were in honour of Queen Tailteann. They were funerary games, and they had lots of different competitions, feats of strength, dancing and music, and it was a real celebration that took place, we think, every year for about a week at a time. The Sinn Féin party, who at the time were led by Eamon de Valera, were in complete opposition to the Tailteann Games happening. The Tailteann Games were an opportunity for the Irish diaspora to come home and to participate and to visit Ireland, but Sinn Féin didn't want anybody coming to Ireland or anyone returning back to Ireland until there was a 32 county island, that there was no partition. So Sinn Féin encouraged people not to attend, not to pay attention to the Tailteann Games, and they did so via pamphlets that they distributed all over Dublin. The new Irish Free State government gave Croke Park a grant of £10,000 to renovate the stadium, and Croke Park was very much the focus of the athletic side of the Tailteann Games. You also had a marathon from Navan to Dublin, which was finishing in Croke Park. You had lots of sporting events. There was a full complement of Gaelic games, including camogie. There was chess that was played in Trinity College, and there was billiards. There was a whole cultural programme as well, which included music, dance, art, and different categories within that. So sculpture, painting, literature, lots of different types of categories. So really something for everyone. So in 1924, you had the Olympics in Paris. In 28, they were in Amsterdam. In 1932, they were in Los Angeles. For the first 2 occasions, there was lots of international athletes travel to Dublin. You had some of the biggest names in athletics who had just won medals at the Olympics now coming to Dublin to participate in the Tailteann Games. One standout one was a man called Johnny Weissmuller, who was a swimmer who had won at the Olympics and came to participate in the Olympic Games. Games, he would eventually go on to become a Hollywood star and played Tarzan in the Hollywood film. Those swimming competitions actually took place in the hippopotamus pool in Dublin Zoo and Phoenix Park. So you had a lot of different parts of the city being used throughout the Tailteann Games. You had car racing competitions in the Phoenix Park, and aeroplane racing competitions taking place in that area too. So it consumed most of the city. So John McCormack was very supportive of the Tailteann Games from the outset. He attended many benefit nights, many fundraising events for the Tailteann Games. In 1924, he was the state's special guest, and he was brought out during the opening ceremony into Croke Park to rapturous applause. So his presence was very well received. John McCormack was very supportive of the more cultural aspects of the Tailteann Games rather than the sporting ones. He had particular interest in the vocal singing competitions, and in 1928 he presented a trophy for that competition, a beautiful silver trophy with very intricate details and design on it, and that trophy is in the collection of the National Museum of Ireland. There were 2 winners. The last one was a woman called Eleanor Sterling, and she won in 1932 in the vocal singing competition. She was from Sandymount in County Dublin. The singing competition that year took place in the Mansion House. There were 47 entries, but only 14 people showed up for the competition. And Eleanor won by 1 point. So the judges released the marks of the competition shortly afterwards, and Eleanor won by 89, and the 89 marks is what she got in the competition, and the person who came second got 88. So Eleanor was the second winner of that trophy, and as it turned out, she was the last one. So that trophy stayed in the Sterling family, and through them it's made its way here to the National Collection.